Hello and welcome to this video presented by Advanced Data Business Systems. ADBS has been developing enterprise software since 1981 for small to large organizations. This is the Advanced Development Shell Series and I am Thomas Wade Gonder. This is video 3158. In this developer explanation video, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself in two ways. First, version 1.24 is still in development, so it hasn't been released, and this video may have an appearance in some ways different from the current evaluation.accde file and from what the final version 1.24 might look like. Definitely true for the element table, which went through a big change in record IDs and organization. Second, I've yet to create some of the videos I have planned to demonstrate in greater detail the related tables that the form template uses. The reason for creating this video out of sequence is that I found a minor bug in the entity form when I was making some changes to the mentioned element table. Now seems like a good time to debug the form in a video so that developers could get a brief overview of how the forms in the ADS use a helper and validation table, as well as some of the basic debugging techniques in the ADS. The errors we will look at happen in the birth, sex combo box of the entity form. The entity form is the main tool used to enter people and organizations, among a few of the other possibilities. The birth sex is the sex assigned at birth, female or male. Gender identity is defined as the role people identify with and wish to live in, and is a different field from birth sex. Here, I have a static image of the two errors displayed at the same time. We can see that the combo box has duplicate entries, and the validation command button has triggered an error reporting form that explains that there is an error in the entry for the birth sex entry field. Let's get into the database and view the errors as they run, and how to begin debugging of the errors. Here is Access version 2021, and I will start my development database. It will appear different from other ADS videos in that the navigation pane has many more objects than one would get in an evaluation version of the ADS.accde file. I will go ahead and log in as the guest administrator, which is E5566 tab with a password of 9999 tab accept, view all the information quickly, remember your name, and continue. I'm presented with the menu system. I'm going to go to the AU Data Administrator, the Supervision menu, the Main menu, and the Entity form. I'll go ahead and close it down. Go to the top menu, and in the menu control, type 4102 and enter, and we can get to the entity form that way also. I'm going to move it into the center. I'm going to shrink down the menu form and minimize it. So now we're only looking at the entity form, and I'll make it a little larger while I'm at it. The problem that we're having is with the birth sex field. And if we drop down the box, we can see that we have female and male two different times. I'm going to go to the previous record, which is my test record, Zelma, and I will go ahead and do the same thing here. I will click on the drop down, and we can see that she's female 1005. The 1005 is the ID. I can also click on this button up here, which runs a validation routine of the data, and we get this display help result form. And for this particular application, we have one error. The birth sex cannot find a record in the table TBLU_4_element. The underscore is a delimiter that has the desired ID and code. You probably aren't quite sure what that means, but we'll get into it. Let's go ahead and close this down. If we look up here, we can see job 4102. That number happens to be also the number that's in the form. But we can't see the form. And right now I'm pressing the F11 key, and you can see that nothing's happening. For us to be able to get to the form itself, we can restore the menu. And here in the menu control, if we're a developer, we can type %APS. APS stands for Access Programming Screen. And that will shut down the menu program. And now we can press F11. It's also been logged that we've gotten into developing in the Access Application Programming Screen. I'm going to type in 4102, and we can see there that that's the form. I'm going to right-click and Design View. And the field that's giving us trouble is the burst sex. There's the label, and here's the combo box. I'm going to right-click on it and go to Properties. And I'm going to go to the data into the row source and hit Shift F2. And we can see that it's selecting a description and the ID from the table U, that's for lookup, for element, where the type ID is a 10 and the level number is greater than or equal to 2, and it's an active record. And this is how we're ordering it. I'll click OK. Let's go ahead and bring up all the pieces again, and let's try typing in element, or a portion of it. Let's go to this element form. A double click, and I'm going to maximize it and hide the navigation pane. There's a lot of records in here, but if you remember, it was looking for a type ID of 10. So we can sort by this. It actually looks like it's already sorted, and scroll down in this column till we find something that looks like 10, and here we go. It starts right here. And we have unknown, neutral, male, female, declined to state, asexual, other, and then we have another unknown. But if we look over here, we can see that these ones down, these 10s down to here, begin with 20, and these up here begin with 10. Well, what happened is, a couple weeks ago, I got into the system and changed all of the records that were 20, and then some 2 digits, to 10, because I wanted to reorganize all of the different elements in this helper table. And it appears that I didn't go and delete all these records for 2000 after I copied them over into the 1000 range. If we take this 10 and scroll up to record number 10, we can see that it's sex. And we also got another sex here, which was 20. So after I was through copying over all the records, apparently I didn't go and delete the 20 and all the records that had been a 20. I just changed them to a type ID of 10. So now that's why in the form, and I'm going to start the menus again. And that starts with a 11, and it's 1112. So double clicking on it will bring up the menus again. I'll have to go, well, let's just type in 4102. There's the form. Let's go to my test record. Scroll down in this box, and we see there's the 1000 and 2000 records. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll close this form. I'll bring up all the objects. I'll look for element, again, or a portion of the name. Go here to number 4, and I'm just going to scroll down till we get to those 10s again. And I'll take everything that starts with a 20 and delete it. Right, so now we go from 10, which starts with 10. It's one of the nice features in the ADS. You can rename the ID for a record, but unfortunately, Access seems to have a problem with cascading relationships. And I'm not quite sure yet why this message keeps popping up, but there doesn't seem to be any way to get around it. It seems that the record is currently locked, but there's nothing that should be locking it, and I've done it with no applications running, just going straight into the table and trying to make a change. But there's a relationship, and it just doesn't want to seem to allow it to do that, which is why I copied all the 2000 series over to 1000 and then forgot to delete them. So let's escape so we don't mess up that record. Let's close down the element table, go back into form 4102, and look at the birth sex. And now we have only the records that start with 1000. Okay, that's error number 1 solved. Let's go ahead and move on to the second error. And that happened when we pressed on the validation button. And we're getting this message, birth sex. Okay, that's coming out of the label, birth sex, so we know which field it is. Cannot find a record in the table TBLU for element, we'll go look at that in a second, that has the desired ID or /code. All right, so why don't we take a look at this TBLU for element. Close. Now we've already gone to the application programming screen and we have the navigation pane open. Let's view all the objects. Let's type in element, go back to my test record. It is 1005, and if we go to the element table and scroll down to 1005, we can see that that record exists and it's showing up in the combo box. So there must be some other problem. The other problem happens when we click on the validation button, which calls a validation procedure for the entire form, and it goes through field by field looking for an error in the data, and that's what we're getting here. So let's go ahead and go back to seeing all of the objects and type in valid for validate, and I want to look in for because we're in the application universal module, application universal, which is module number 4. I'm going to look in this validate table. I'm going to maximize it again, hide the navigation pane, and you see this 4102 in this column? That means that all of these records from here down to here are records that control the validation for the different fields in the form. And if you remember, we had one called sex ID. Now it does have some delimiters and some other fields in its name. That's how the whole system works, and is a subject for another video. But let's look at this sex ID, this row here. So we've got an auto ID, which is 4102 and 08, which just happens to be the 8th field that we want to validate. Its network resource backend is 0000, so that means company overall. We have the job ID, which happens to also be the name, or at least a portion of the name for the form itself. We have the field, we have its sort, so it's number 8. CU signifies that it's a currency field, and then we have some defaults in this column. You can see this percent sign that says we're doing something kind of special with organizational logic, which are special procedures that find a default value. And let's go ahead and just scroll out here. And we can see down here in the existing table, we have TBLU, table lookup, for element. We're looking for a type ID of 20. Well, wait a minute. We just saw a minute ago that the type ID of 20 is the old value and the new value is a 10. Let's go ahead and just change that to a 10. Save this record, close this table, bring back our navigation pane, close this form because we want to reload all that validation information we just saw in the validation table. Let's go 4102, enter. Notice that the forms are still maximized. We can bring them back down to normal size. Again, shrink the menus if we want, minimize it, move this form around, make it bigger. But now we're going to click on this button for validation. A nice green screen, entry validated, no errors found. So we just had a small problem in that validation table. So now our form will show only the records that we want because we deleted the old ones, and we can get a validation to run without any problems as far as that code goes that was out there at the end of that record for this particular field in the validation table. That concludes this portion of this video. Once we start the 3150 end series of videos, you can view them to get a greater understanding of some of the helper tables that are used for forms in the ADS.